may have heard something about the police response to demonstrators here in St. Paul this week. Before the Republican convention or the demonstrations even began, there were law enforcement raids on protesters and activists. By far, most protesters were peaceful, but some demonstrators got rowdy and broke windows. Police responded with, among other things, tear gas and mass arrests. Among those arrested were journalists, including an Associated Press photographer, and Amy Goodman, host of the award-winning radio and TV news program Democracy Now! Goodman's arrest was caught on videotape, and it's touched off an intense debate about freedom of the press and the role of the police. So, Amy Goodman, how have you been holding up here?
Well, Labor Day was quite a day of work. It was the first day of the Republican convention, so around 4 o'clock I was on the floor. Then I got a call on my cell phone that our reporters, our producers, Nicole Salazar and Sharifa Belkadous, had been arrested and were bloodied by police covering a protest here in St. Paul.
So you're inside the
convention
arena,
center, on the floor of the convention floor.
So you make a beeline out to find out what's going on with your producers.
Yes, and we raced to the site where they were, Jackson and 7th in St. Paul. When we came, the police had really locked down the area. There was a long riot police line. I ran up to them, and I stopped and said, I want to talk to your commanding officer. 2 of our producers are inside. They've been arrested, and we need to have them released. They're accredited journalists, and I showed my accreditation as well. I mean, it wasn't seconds before they grabbed me and tossed me through the police line, pulled me through the police line. They twisted my arms back, and they forcibly put on those plastic, rigid cuffs that just dig into your wrists. They pushed me against a wall, and they pushed me down on the ground. I demanded to see our producers. I finally saw Sharif across the parking lot.
This is one of the producers.
One of our producers, and he was in handcuffs, his credentials in full view. I demanded to see Nicole. They brought me over to Sharif. I kept saying, we are journalists, we're fully credentialed. With that, a Secret Service agent came over and ripped my credential off. Also took Sharif's high security credential.
Well, I want to understand this better. Your arms are behind your back, and somebody came by and took the credential?
Yes, I couldn't do anything, and the Secret Service agent took the credential. They put me on the police wagon, and Nicole was there, she too wearing her credential. And I asked Nicole what had happened. They had been at work. We work right by this space where the protest was. They heard a commotion, came downstairs, saw the police. She was filming with a video camera. There was a parking lot. The police came at her very fast, full riot gear, and they were saying, face on the ground, face on the ground. The police came at her. She was trapped. It's a parking lot. There were cars behind her, and she said, where can we go? Press, press. And she's showing her press credential, and she's filming. They take her down. She's on her stomach. They've got she didn't know if it was their boot or their knee between her shoulder blades. And another one, inexplicably, is pulling on her leg, and they're saying face on the ground. So her face is bloodied as she is pulled. That's what happened with the 2 of them.
But we should point out the context of this. Thousands of people demonstrating here in the Twin Cities peacefully. However, there have been some people breaking windows. I think actually the window where you have your studio got broken the other day?
The building.
The building did?
Yeah, the window was broken. I mean, I think the point here in this situation, when I arrived on the scene, police had secured the area. They were in total control. So when I came up, I was the only one in that line of police, and I was in front of them. And I was just saying, I want to talk to a commanding officer. I want my reporters, my producers released.
Goodman's producers both face felony riot charges. Goodman herself was charged with interfering with a peace officer and misdemeanor obstruction of the legal process. Their attorneys are working to have the charges dropped. Now, you attended a press conference where the St. Paul chief of police was asked about this?
When I got out of jail that night, the next morning I heard that the St. Paul police chief, John Harrington, was holding a news conference. So I went to the news conference and asked him how we are to operate in this kind of atmosphere, what they're telling police they should be doing, and what they're telling press they should be doing.
How can reporters do their jobs in covering people speaking out against what they see going on here.
He suggested embedding in the police mobile field force.
Embedding like Iraq embedding?
Yes, embedding there, it's in the front lines of troops. Well, here, in some cases, it's all too often similar, I should say. But, you know, we're unembedded, we're independent, and it's absolutely critical to have independent journalists in a time of war, in a time of pressure like this. I mean, here at the Republican convention in St. Paul, last week at the Democratic convention in Denver, it's supposed to be celebrating the finest of the democratic process. And instead, they're cracking down on the journalists, the watchdogs.
You feel that's what's happening? You're not just sort of swept up in a bigger process? You think it's a crackdown?
I think there are two things going on. Yes, I think there is a sweep, and there has to be a serious question asked about many of the peaceful protesters that were arrested. But also, we are so clearly marked that it is specifically not separating out journalists. It has not only been us. The day we arrived, 2 days before Labor Day, I got a text when I was at the airport that the police were raiding the Eyewitness Video Collective home. They had come into town. They're going to be documenting what happened at the Republican convention, and the police had surrounded the area. We raced there. The police were there. Eileen Clancy, the head of Eyewitness Video, was, along with others, in handcuffs in the backyard. What happened with Eileen Clancy and this group that are so well known, especially in New York, for documenting what happened at the Republican convention in 2004.
Yeah, they train their cameras on police action in just the situation.
Right. And here, I mean, there is a direct targeting that is going on.
Because this incident you're talking about is before the convention has actually started.
Oh, this is what is called a preemptive raid. You know, Tom Cruise, Minority Report, being arrested for pre-crimes?
Yes, I remember that film. Before the crime happens.
That's right. Well, this is a preemptive raid. And we saw the warrant, which, by the way, was for the house next door and not for theirs. But it said, among other things, hard drives, computers, cell phones. So they tossed the place. They're getting directions from higher up. And this idea of preemptive raids, preempting crimes. And what are the crimes? Eyewitnessing what the police are doing.
Amy, what do you think the effect of these kind of actions can be?
I think we're talking about a real chilling effect. People are afraid to go out. Is it worth it? I mean, people believe in the principle of bearing witness, but there is a limit. I mean, you don't want to be hurt. The police chief and the press conferences that have been held since we were arrested, they talk about, well, they're investigating whether to bring certain charges. I said, are you going to be investigating the police officers as well? Are you going to be investigating misconduct? It's not just about whether charges will be dropped against innocent people. It's about bringing charges against those who are abusing their power.
You're making a lot of very interesting points. There's a quadrillion members of the media in the arena right now. And if the word is out that pretty much they're sweeping up reporters as well, you're liable to stay inside in the relative safety of the arena.
Well, that's a key point. And several journalists have said to me, well, why is it that some reporters are getting arrested, but many of us are not? And I just simply said, are you out in the streets? Are you there covering? 90% of life is just showing up. And it is our job to be there. Our coverage is called Breaking with Convention, War, Peace, and the Presidency, from the suites to the streets to the convention floor. We've got to cover all aspects of this event.
It's not just what's happening in the podium. It's also what's happening on the streets. But if you're afraid of getting beaten up or arrested or getting a felony on your record, maybe you'll stick around eating hot dogs and sitting in your comfy seat inside.
That's right, in the skyboxes. But that only gives you one picture. It is very important that we be covering all aspects of this, what is called a national security event. Because so often those inside the convention center, whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, do not represent the majority of Americans. The people out here in the streets also represent many people. They're grassroots movements that are not invited inside, but they're deeply concerned about issues like war, like torture.
Well, Amy Goodman, host of Democracy Now!, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There was another big political convention going on in Minnesota this week. Ron Paul's Rally for the Republic stole at least a bit of the media spotlight. They claim to be the true agents of political change. But where do they go from here? Read our exclusive interview with Ron Paul on our website.